Wuthering Waves is one of the biggest gacha games out right now, and people are talking a lot about the ecosystem. There are two ideologies there are two ideologies battling it out between 44111 and 43311, but it's really not that deep. I'm here to break it down to make it a lot simpler. Remember that these two arguments are only really made for DPS characters, and arguments made for 44111 are only made for Havoc and Electro characters. This is due to the fact that those are the only two elements that have two unique boss echoes. If you try to use 44111 on any other element besides those two, you're hard coping. Set bonuses in Wuthering Waves, especially the 5-piece ones, are really strong. No one is arguing that 44111 is stronger than 43311, with those 3-cost echoes being on the right set as well as the right element. This entire thing is about balancing ease of acquisition, efficiency, and damage output. So now that you understand the context, let's get into the pros and cons. Remember that 44111 is never argued to be a good end goal, simply the vessel that will help carry you to your final destination of an on-element on-set 43311. And quick disclaimer, even though I agree with Gachasmack more than Tenten in this case, I will put up the main talking points for both. For 44111, it's easy to farm the bosses as they infinitely respawn after a short timer. There's a small stat pool to dig through as you're only looking for crit rate and crit damage, which is only 2 out of the potential 7 options. Upon obtaining the right set and main stat for your 3-cost echoes, which is the ideal set, you can still use those extra 4-cost echoes and 1-cost echoes that you replaced on another character, so long as they're the same element. If you get good rolls on these echoes that you're replacing, they can be used on future characters without worrying about breaking the set bonus. The downside of 44111 is that you have to spend a fair bit of time farming bosses, and you can't use it on too many characters. The more characters that you use on 44111, the less characters that you're going to be able to transfer those extra 4-cost and 1-cost echoes as you obtain your perfect 3-cost echoes. According to Tenten, 43311 is calculated to do more damage even though you have no set bonuses, and it makes use of echoes that you normally wouldn't use anyway, because they're on broken sets. You likely already have them, so you probably don't have to go farm anymore, and you don't have to think as it follows the same cost structure as the ideal set. However, upon obtaining the right set and main stat 3-cost echoes, these temporary wrong set echoes will just become material and XP fodder. You can technically put them on future characters, but at that point, you likely have extra spare 3-cost echoes of the same element as the set they're on that you can use instead. Neither of them are completely wrong in their thinking. Even if Tenten's math is right and 43311 is better without any set bonuses, is it big enough to warrant investing resources into echoes that will eventually become completely obsolete anyway? And do you want to spend the time farming for 4-cost echoes that you might not use if you don't have another character of the same element that you want to use on the same team? These are questions that you have to answer and what you feel like is right for you. You can always fuse those echoes for XP and tuners back, but in the case of 44111, at least those echoes could be used elsewhere to complete the ideal setup. There is a difference in damage, but these are all suboptimal sets that are supposed to be used temporarily anyway. Why should you stress over it so much? If you're a person that likes to min-max all the time for the highest damage at this early stage of the game, then go 43311. If you think you can hold off on missing maybe 10% damage temporarily to potentially save resources in the future for your Havoc and Electro characters, at least for 1.0 right now, then go 44111. So now that you heard from the main two viewpoints, I'm going to give my own thoughts on this. Number 1 is obviously the ideal set, which is the 43311, with your 3-cost echoes being the right main stat element and the right set. Even if your substats are not great on this, you should use it anyway because this is the best that you can get. I would say for me, number 2 is 44111, and while the damage calculations say that some of the other sets are better, I personally value the ability to be able to swap these 4s and 1 costs that are going to be left over when you switch to the 3s a lot more than just doing more damage temporarily. Since our final goal is to reach that perfect 43311 onset on element echoes, I kind of see this one as just a perfectly fine stepping stone that you can still scrap stuff from in the future. Now, you could make the argument that this isn't that great because you could just swap them over if you're doing some difficult content like Tower of Adversity, but like you can also do the same thing for every other set. So I don't think that you can only make that argument against 4-4-1-1-1. In number 3, we have the 2+2. So this means at least 2 pieces of the right element and then 2 pieces of either the Lingering Tunes or the Moonlit Cloud set. And those are the attack percent and the ER set respectively. And with this, of course, you should go the right element on your 3 cost echoes. Because these are the attack percent sets and the ER sets, they're very flexible. So if you value flexibility and being able to use this on multiple characters as long as they're on the same element, then you should go with this since it's really convenient. For me, I don't value this as highly because it's very usable, but it's not ideal most of the time for DPS characters. If you don't care about min-maxing all the way, then this 2+2 works perfectly fine and it'll be very serviceable to the very end. But for someone like me who wants to build towards that most ideal final echo setup, I kind of value this one a little bit lower. Next at number 4 in terms of priority for me is a 5-piece on element 4-3-3-1-1, with one of your 3 cost echoes being an attack percent main stat instead of an elemental percent. Now attack percent main stat is a lot easier to get because the pool is pretty saturated, but it feels like attack percent lands a lot more commonly than the elemental percentages. Now this set might be weird at number 4 for some people since it has been calculated to do more damage than 4-4-1-1-1. However, I feel like for me personally, since the main stat is attack percent, you can't really shift this over to another echo set for a future character as easily. You can, but it's never going to be as good as the ideal. If you're the kind of person to value flexibility over min-maxing, then this is a good set for you. In my mind, since that 4 cost and the 1 cost echo on 4-4-1-1-1 can still be used in an ideal set in the future, I personally see that as a higher value for me. And the last one is the rainbow set on 4-3-3-1-1. Now the reason why I think this one is in last place for me is that there's kinda nowhere where you can use it if 1 or 2 of these pieces gets replaced. Especially if it's one like electro damage on the fusion set, because you're not going to be able to use that if you get a replacement. So in a situation where you have one of these rainbow pieces, as in like I said, the electro damage on the fusion set, and then you get one of your 3 costs on the right element, you would put that one on, and then this one would be hindering your progress of finishing the full set. And that's why I would say that the rainbow is the worst in my opinion. Just the sheer obstruction of future progress if you do invest too hard into this one. This obviously wouldn't be a big deal if only one of your pieces were rainbow, but using both is a really bad idea. You can always merge them into your future better echoes, but there's always that lost bit of experience that matters a lot more to people who are free to play. Investing too much into a on element but wrong set costs a lot of experience and tuners, and you could say the same thing about the other pieces, but at least for those you can still kind of use them for something else in the future. Sets 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all temporary anyway, and they're not going to be your best set that you can have in the end. Remember that while this is partially a numbers game of who can get the best stat line and who can do the most damage, in the end, the way that you can improve the most is to improve your own gameplay. Someone with good gameplay and suboptimal echoes is still going to beat someone with perfect echoes and suboptimal gameplay. I know that last bit was really messy and all, but if you enjoyed the video, let me know what you think in the comments, like, subscribe, all that stuff, or whatever.